Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 85.
Congratulations, you showed up. Give yourself a high five in celebration of your success. Welcome to the Cashflow Diary, where new and experienced investors come to take confident action towards their goals. Your host is a family man, a real estate entrepreneur, investor, coach, and instructor. As a master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's Cashflow 101 game, he's inspired many to begin their journey into creating cash flow for themselves and their family. And now, here he is to offer you the tools required to earn the income desired. Your cash flow coach, Jay Massey.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. My name is Jay. I am your host, and I am so glad that you continue to listen. Thank you for being here. We do our best to continually bring the biggest, baddest, brightest entrepreneurs that we can who are out there making cash flow happen in various different ways. And that's exactly what I want you to learn, is how to build cash flow here at the Cashflow Diary. Now, obviously, you guys know, if this is your first time, you may not know, but we do it through real estate. But real estate isn't the only way to make cash flow happen. So many entrepreneurs are out there doing so many things, creating great products, great services, and serving their customer base in a very, very strong fashion. And today's guest is absolutely no exception to that. Now, if this is your first time joining us, here's what I want you to do. Go over to learninvestingnow.com, learninvestingnow.com, and get started learning investing now, literally, so that you have the ability to go ahead and begin to build that knowledge base that's required to go out there to be a bigger, better investor in whatever it is that you're looking to do. Now, today's guest, now you got to understand, what's interesting to me is that today's guest has been on places like CNN, ABC's Good Morning America, CBS, Oprah Radio, and the New York Times, Fast Company, as well as the Wall Street Journal. This is exciting that we get to talk to individuals who are out there making waves, making things happen, and going out there, taking their passions, putting it into business, and creating good things for their customers. Kevin Johnson is here today to share with you and I a lot of the information that you and I already need, and possibly some of the mindset behind what's it going to take to help all of us get to the next level. So do me a favor. When he says something, write it down. When he gives you an idea, take note of it. Move at the speed of instruction. In fact, he has a book, The Entrepreneur Mind, 100 Essential Beliefs, Characteristics, and Habits of, hear the word, elite entrepreneurs. So help me welcome Mr. Kevin Johnson. Kevin, you there?
I'm here, and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate it, you making the time. I know schedule's busy. You're always, one day ahead thinking about the next thing, but occasionally slowing down and investing here with us, we definitely appreciate that. Now, one of the things that I often say is that I tend to look at, entrepreneurs today. Today's entrepreneurs are like yesterday's superheroes. When you say, Batman or Wonder Woman or Aquaman, they all are superheroes. Now, every superhero has an origin story. They started from somewhere. They started as something other than their superhero persona. So one of the first questions I love to ask nearly everybody is, before Kevin Johnson was Kevin Johnson, president of Johnson Media and 13 years of experience and doing all these wonderful things, who was Kevin Johnson?
That's a great question. And I love how you introduced the question, because actually in a part of my book, in the motivation section, I talk about how entrepreneurs are just like superheroes, right?
No way.
Oh, definitely. In the part, you sometimes get more resentment than respect. And I actually draw the parallel between the Avengers fighting and squashing unemployment, recessions, and underdevelopment. And so I love that introduction, because it ties right into that. But who was Kevin Johnson? So Kevin Johnson, before the entrepreneur or business owner that I am, was a very reserved, reticent techie that loved to code. So when I got to college here in Atlanta, Georgia, at Morehouse College, my focus was getting my computer science degree, and I just loved coding. So what I put together was a website for a lot of the college students here in Atlanta, and it became very popular. So one day, two young ladies who owned a company called JobDirect.com, which was later acquired by a large recruitment firm, called me up and said, "How much does it cost to advertise on your website?" And I had no idea. And I'm not, I'm not proud of this, but if you can recall on the old school phones, and some of you may have these, you could actually click the mute button and give the impression that you were clicking over to the other line. So I did that, looked on Alta Vista and web crawler to find out how to price a banner ad. I couldn't find it. So I clicked back over and I gave out a random number of $1,800. And if you remember, this is the .com boom era. So they said, "Great, we'll FedEx you the check tomorrow." And that's when the light bulb went off in my head. And I said, wow, I can actually program and get paid for it. So that's when I became an entrepreneur.
That's awesome. What I really love about that story is oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we don't realize what the value that we're creating. We go out there and we think it's, I'm sure you were thinking it's the website, and they're like, no, it's the advertising ability. It's the database that you're in front of. It's those eyeballs that they wanted to get in front of. Now, when you, and I'm just curious if you had the same experience. When I've had that experience and I just thrown out a number, typically the number I throw out gets a very similar response of yes. And I was like, dang it. The first thought that comes to my head was, I should have asked for more. Is that happened for you?
That's the story exactly. I kind of cut it short to give you time to jump in, but sure, I was kicking myself. And, I think that goes a bit to the metaphysical or even psychological aspect of business. I didn't think that the value that I was providing was worth more. In fact, I was afraid of giving them a higher number because in my mind, I said, I'd love to say 5,000, but there was something telling me to lower it because of that fear of them saying no. And you and I know at this point in our career, you want to start high and get to the
Yeah.
point right where you maximize the value for whatever product or service that you're offering. So yes, I did kick myself, but in today's money, I'd say that's about $3,000 more or less. As for a sophomore was pretty good.
No doubt. Well, hey, here's the most important thing. You started. And that at the end of the day, you started, even though you wouldn't do, and I tell people this all the time, just get started because doing that first deal is more important than trying to do that first deal perfectly. And
Right.
you definitely did that. And you brought up something when you said, fear. And I think fear plays many, many different tricks on the mind. I often tell people that fear does three things in this order. First, it disguises itself, then it divides us, then it destroys us, and in various different ways. Now, I'm curious to know how have you dealt with that fear? Because occasionally I get the question, I'm sure you do too, is people say, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm afraid.
Sure. And let me take a quick step back to what you said because I think it's really worth noting. You mentioned that sometimes we don't realize as entrepreneurs or fledgling entrepreneurs what the value of our product or service is. And for me, I was lucky to have figured that out early. So in my particular situation, a lot of the companies, whether it was QSRs or as the quick service restaurants or fast food companies, as some of us will call them, as they wanted to target students, they were trying to go through the schools. And the schools are all about academics, right? And even if your brand doesn't coincide with theirs, they're going to give you some pushback. So there was a huge market to serve for these companies, and that's eventually what added to the success of the project. So going to fear, I've learned to just kind of shut off fear. I talked about my loathing of distance running and racing, but I do it anyway because I know the benefits. But before every race, I get this huge amount of fear, and I try to think about something else and focus on the benefit. So for me, it's been a long process, but just really focusing on something else other than the fear itself, primarily the benefits, helps me to get over that fear.
Interesting. So, if I love how you say that you focus on the benefits because oftentimes fear enlarges what you focus on enlarges, and if you're focused on those benefits, then obviously in theory that's what's enlarging. But with that being the case, do you think someone who has or feels afraid, what should they do? Because maybe they don't want to do distance running in some way, shape, or form. Is there some way for them to work around their fear, or do you work through it, or you try to eliminate it completely? What's the master secret?
For me, it's and this is very personal. It's a bit of a game. So I know what really gets me motivated and helps me to minimize or totally get rid of that fear. So I'll get very practical. So, I love music. There are certain songs that if I get fearful, I'll put them on and kind of zone out, or if I've got jitters or bugs or nervousness about something. So I may put on a popular song. All I do is win. Shut that out.
Hey,
Turn it up.
yeah.
I'm a huge a fan of salsa music. That just every time I hear good salsa music, it makes me happy, and I shut everything else out. And I'm in that moment, and it helps me to get rid of that fear. That's something else that I do. Just finding whatever it is for you personally, and it's a journey. It's not something overnight, and I think it's very personal. But those are just some very practical things that really help me to get rid of that fear and to pump myself up to make myself through that fear and ultimately reach success.
So let me ask you this question: is that something you learned at home, or is that some of that OJT on the job training?
It's a little bit of both. And in fact, I like to read. I like to um, acquire information, like the information that you're providing by interviewing people like me. And so, I'd learn what works for other people, and I gave it a try. Another very simple practical way to come overcome my fear, especially of public speaking, is breathing. Deep breathing really helps. I'd read about it, I'd heard about it, and I said, well, it won't hurt to try it out, and it really does help to calm your nerves. So it's a combination of things. A lot of people tell me that one of my good traits is that I'm very calm. So even when things are going crazy or I'm putting out fires, I've had clients say it's really calming to have that even temperament, and so I've learned to develop that through using different techniques that I've read about and implemented and found that have worked for me.
Well, I can tell you right now, no one has ever accused me of being calm. But awesome. So that's good. That's good. I love it. What would you say though, with all of these hurdles? Okay, so if that's you had to learn those things. So is there such a thing as a born entrepreneur? Were you born a business owner, or how does that happen?
Wow. Well, you know, that's sort of the question at hand. Can entrepreneurs be made? And I think it's a little bit of both, but I will say that some of the most effective ones have those innate characteristics that are going to propel them to success much faster than someone who's kind of got to learn those characteristics that are going to propel them. I was talking to a colleague the other day, and I said, I think everybody who wants to be an entrepreneur should learn how to sell, whether it's selling
Mm.
your own product or service or going to work for somebody else. I think the art of persuasion, the art of being able to convince people of the value of your product or service is so important. And you'll see across the board that the billionaires, those that are very successful, like yourself, have mastered the art of selling, or literally finding people who are very good at selling, and can bring in that revenue and those customers. So I do think entrepreneurs are born, so to speak, but there is an opportunity more so now that academia is implementing programs with entrepreneurship for those who don't have those innate skills to achieve. So it's a little bit of both for me. I,
Yeah.
I don't fall necessarily on either side.
Got it. I hear you. I hear you exactly what you're saying because I like the idea of using your talents. And if you have some natural talents that help you get there faster, it makes perfect sense. I know for one, my oldest daughter, she's probably tired of hearing this, but every time it's one of the first things I like to teach my kids is anytime they ask for something, I say, well, one, I wanted to find a way to always tell my kids yes as opposed to no. So when they ask for something, I would tell them, yes, you can have it, whatever the it is. And then I would say, all you have to do is develop a product or service and sell it. And then you can
Right.
have whatever you want. And, you know, that has led to some interesting conversations, obviously, but definitely has led to my oldest daughter now does, you know, crochet items and sells them online and stuff of that nature. But it's pretty cool to have she's been hearing that since like she was 9. So it's, you know, a number of years now. She graduates high school and move on. What's interesting is I don't know that she was born, but she just learned to do those things that are required of an entrepreneur to make that happen.
No,
Now,
I can send you 100%. I saw recently, I think it was a TED talk on how to raise entrepreneurial kids. And, I think that goes along the same lines. It's not, okay, here's your allowance or your check for working, so to speak. It's a matter of changing the paradigm and saying, okay, if you come up with something, a product or service that you can sell, then you'll get an allowance, right? So I think you're doing a good job of instilling those values from a young age, such that they can have anything they want in life because they've got a value proposition.
yep, and that was the goal. But at the same time, for those of you wondering, was it just because I was some sort of genius? Nope, I just didn't have any money, and I didn't want to tell my kids no, so I had to come up with a new way to say yes
Right.
to my kids. That's what that was all about. Now, what other misconceptions would you believe that people have about entrepreneurship? Because you said a word that probably turned a number of people off. You said the word sales. I know sometimes when we hear the word sales, we think plaid jackets, we think, slimy, we think people you can't trust. So many things come to our mind just by saying the word. I'm curious to know from your perspective, what other, things have you learned that maybe someone is thinking is true but that you've learned aren't true, and most importantly those beliefs that will help actually serve them as they go out there to build their cash flow?
Sure, two very quick ideas, and I'll start with the sales idea. That's something that I had to learn very quickly. If you build it, they won't necessarily come. And
Oh, I see that's universal. This is good to know. All right, good. I
right,
thought it was
right.
at least I wasn't being picked on. This is good.
Well, being the antisocial tech guy, sales is the last thing I ever wanted to do. But once I made that first deal, I was hooked. And so I had to go through a learning process. And I like how you put it. A lot of people consider sales or salespeople the oily, unctuous, backslapping, used car salesman kind of proposition. But, that's not necessarily all of the people involved in sales. So I had to learn my particular style. My style was, especially as a computer science major, here's the data, and this is why you logically should buy to increase the sales of your business or solve some challenge that your business or you personally may be having. And so I had to learn that. And I think everyone should get over, if they can, um, that notion that salespeople are that used car type of person. There are different types of salespeople, and I learned very quickly. I'll tell you a quick story. There was a prospective buyer for one of the media companies that I had, and I walked into his store, and he said, Kevin, I will never buy from you. And I was quite offended, but I wanted to continue to engage with him to see why he would never buy to me. He said, you know what? Listen, he says, you have a great product. You're a smart guy. I understand the numbers. I really think this will help my business, but I don't want to buy from you. I'd rather buy from your editor. And so my editor at the time was a young lady, very, very good looking lady. She went on to become Miss DC. And all he wanted to do was to say hello to her or meet her in person. And so I didn't take it personally. And the next thing I did was I sent her just to say hello. And he was one of my best customers for years. And so I learned that it's not so much about me. And it was a matter of humbling myself to really figure out what the customer wanted. And at that time, it wasn't so much the product as much as it was some of the side benefits from
Yeah, I
uh,
get that. And
yeah,
and I get
exactly.
that completely. I get that. I mean, sales is what is it? It's not a place where you get your emotional needs met. And unfortunately, many of us, we're broken people in various different forms, and we try to get our emotional needs met by our customer, and then we get all hurt and all this other stuff. But that's not the point. But the point is exactly what you realized. People buy for their reasons, not ours.
That's
Period.
right.
And his part of his reason was to get to know one more person. And I
Right.
understand.
Exactly. I just and so the second misconception that I learned early on, and I was able to go in a different direction, was that I heard this from a veteran entrepreneur, and she said it takes money to make money. So not really understanding what that meant, I figured that I had to go out and raise a big amount of money from a venture capitalist. So I'm 19 or 20 and trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my company. And instead of bootstrapping or managing cash flow wisely to grow, I thought I had to go raise $2 million. And it really made no sense. But I quickly learned that I could through vendor financing or through smart growth, really fund my own growth. And, I try to get the word out to those new entrepreneurs that there are ways to start $1 million businesses with very little money in the very beginning. In fact, less than 1% of entrepreneurs will ever get in front of a VC uh, to raise money. That's a very unrealistic approach to running and having a successful business. So, in all cases, it doesn't take money to make money. It usually takes sweat equity, the commitment, and just the work and diligent work to do that.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is it's two things for me. Is when people ask me, say that same thing, it takes money to make money. I say, you know what, you're absolutely right. The challenge is what you call money is wrong, and
Right.
and what's money today is intellectual capital. That's what's money, and that's what you've got to go out there and do. That's where the value is. Money is just that tool. It's a representation of the value that you create, and it's a tool that gives you access to the products and services of other people. So until you have that, you got to use your own services. You got to use, as you were saying, your sweat equity to make that thing happen. And interestingly enough, for me, now having done many tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate transactions, the one uniqueness that I'm learning was that I learned that I had to raise capital from the beginning. And I didn't know that that was like somehow something new. That I only knew that that's the way it was going to happen. And I've at this point have not used a bank in any of my real estate transactions, not because I personally go, ooh, banks are horrible, although I can't stand going to the bank. And I don't like how they do credit scores and all this other stuff and fractional reserve. And don't get me started on that. It's just, it's just that learning to raise capital has been such a very important detail inside of my business. I think right after selling, I think the next thing is you've got to learn how to raise capital. And it's not about raising money as much as it is about gaining access to other people's resources.
Right.
And that's really the key in my opinion. I mean, and I've helped people learn to raise money through, various different courses and whatnot. But the point here is I like how you put it. I like the fact that everybody was saying go VC, but yeah, that's kind of like not gonna happen. So I've got to find another way. And you didn't do what most people do is they turn around and run home and saying I couldn't get the money. You found another way. Where did that come from? All right. Thank you for continuing to listen. And yes, I am hoping some of you have told us that we had an audio issue in all of the previous episodes. I am hoping that this is the issue. This is the episode where all of that is changed. You don't have to keep changing the volume up or down, up or down, and when the segments switch, so therefore you have consistent audio levels all the way through. Um, you know what? I'm going to be brave and say Send us an email if this one still doesn't sound the right way. Anyway, with all of that being said, we had a fantastic time. For those of you who joined us live learning how to generate leads, it was great. Thank you for being there. Hopefully you were able to understand all of the information you going out there. You know, guys, one of the funnest things is being able to share this information with you in such a way that you're able to get results. We had people literally getting results immediately during the class, generating leads while we were all there talking and chatting and working and making things happen. In fact, I've even heard from some others who have already, they've taken those leads and begun to, or previous leads that they had generated from some of the information that we've done before, and they've begun to raise capital. It's amazing. You guys are awesome because you're out there and you are taking the action steps that are necessary. So hopefully, now that summer has officially begun for so many people, you're out there taking more action, staying focused, making it happen, taking advantage of the time that you do have, not focusing on the time that you don't have, and writing those offers, making deals go down. And I want to get you guys back to the rest of this interview because I think you're going to love it.
Wow, I think that goes back a little bit to the fear thing. I mentioned that less than 1% of entrepreneurs will ever get in front of a VC. So what goes on with those other 99%? A large majority of that 99% are funding themselves via credit cards. And that's the great majority of how a lot of individuals will fund themselves. Um, Whether it's friends and family, that's another opportunity. But for me, it was just a matter of knowing that I could sell a product or service before it existed. And once I found out that I could do that, there really wasn't very much need for me to raise money. So, in actuality, what I did was I went out knocking on doors and saying, "Hey, this is my product, and this is when it's going to launch. This is a little about me, and sign on the dotted line to advertise when this particular media comes out." So people were going out on faith. A lot of them had already become familiar with myself and my brand. So when I extended the brand, for example, from an internet site to a print publication, they said, "Oh, we know you. We know what you've done, and you seem like a good guy. Sign us up." So for me, that was very helpful in building the brand so that people felt comfortable investing in me before the product or service was delivered.
I think you just hit on something that's uber important, is that oftentimes, especially when you're a customer and or an investor, or even those who work on your staff, they're all investing in you first.
Right.
And you hit on that, and they're just using a different tool. Your customers using money, investors is often using money as well, but in a different capacity and usually at different quantities. And then the staff, they're using their time, the most valuable, irreplaceable asset they have, in order to invest in the vision and mission of what it is that you guys are doing. And it's kind of funny at this point. I'm just realizing. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you actually do.
Right. Yeah, that's a good thing. So I'll give you a very quick evolution of how we got to where we are now. So started the website, and then decided to extend the website brand to a magazine. If you can recall, in the early 2000, the digital realm was very new. So there weren't a lot of companies, even though there were a few that were buying a lot of banner ads. Right, we hadn't really reached that mass market yet where we are today. So I was trying to figure out ways that I could extend the brand to other platforms. So launched the magazine. The magazine did very well. That was a cash cow. Shut down the magazine in '07, '08. I wish I had sold it in '06 or '07. But a lot of the advertisers pulled back during the Great Recession, right? A lot of print publications went out of business. So at that point, I had to pivot again. I had to say, wow, what are we going to do? So I reached out to the advertisers and I said, what do you think about us becoming a full service advertising agency where we buy media, we create media, we make the commercials, we make the radio spots, and we actually place them in the media that's still around after the Great Recession? And so a lot of them said, "Hey, you do great work. I think that would be a wonderful pivot for you guys." And that was the start of us, Johnson Media Inc., as a full service marketing and communications firm. And so on a day to day basis, we're building creative for our clients in two particular sectors: automotive category. We've done some great work with Cadillac and helping them introduce their new models into the market. And then on the financial services side, even though I know you're a little averse to the banking sector, a lot of the big banks and helping them make the transition to this mobile world and to promote their products and services. So those are the two sectors that we're in, and a little bit about what we do.
Got it. Got it. And it's not that I don't like banks, it's that they don't like me, you know. It's like I want to go do this and they never want to do the same thing. They want to do something different. That's usually the challenge.
Well, you
But
know what? You should start your own bank.
hey, I have had that thought. I have so had that thought. You have no idea. I was like, what would that take? So, and if it's one thing my team doesn't need is another new idea from Jay. They don't like, please
I
stop.
do.
Stop. So yeah, I hear you. But what I want to talk about that I heard is the concept of pivoting. I know we've had to do it. I know many entrepreneurs do it, but I want to hear it from your perspective because oftentimes when we're sitting down thinking about our business and business growth and, years into the future, the only thing we imagine is a steady, straight line in the up direction. That's what we imagine. But that's usually not what happens. So I'd like to dig in a little bit more on that pivoting process because sometimes when that line breaks or starts to go a different direction, many entrepreneurs exit. They take the off ramp, but you didn't. So do tell. Why not?
So, one of the most popular parts of my book is the chapter, "The Business Plan is Overrated." And I talk about how Silicon Valley retired serial entrepreneur Steve Blank said no business plan survives first contact with a customer. And so you've got to go into entrepreneurship, into business, knowing that chances are you're going to have to pivot and you're going to need what it takes to go through that oftentimes very difficult process. So for us, or for me personally, I'll go a level deeper. There is no other way, right? So there's no exit for me. It's either this is really common, and I think more than uh, a lot of other types of businesses, we understand that sooner or later you're going to have to pivot. In fact, that's just the nature of business and entrepreneurship. I don't think you can stay the same and be in business for very long. In fact, I read a statistic, and I don't know the statistic perfectly, but there are very few companies that are still on the Dow Jones Industrial Average where they are years ago, and very few have made it this far without changing. So changing is inevitable, pivoting is inevitable. So you might as well get used to the idea that you're going to need to do that in the future.
Yeah, go in with the right mindset. Don't actually expect to be, and even in 2 years, the same thing that you are today. And what I really like is you said no business plan survives the first contact with a customer, and that's, we probably take the exact opposite approach to that, and just throw out the whole idea of a business plan to begin with. Let's just go sell it and let them tell us what it needs to be.
That's what I'm talking about. In fact, Babson University, or Babson College, I think that's the better way to call it. They've actually changed their whole academic program to do that, to explore the market first before you start writing a business plan, or what I like to call a Franken plan. You kind of get all these random business plans and kind of put it together to produce a new one.
Yeah, I just always thought it was. I mean, that doesn't mean no plan. It just means the 50-page or 100-page document with all this stuff. It's like none of that matters until you ask somebody to buy it.
Hey,
So
I like to quip and say, no one was asking Mark Zuckerberg for a business plan. I mean, hey, I have 100 million users. Well, where's your business plan? I mean, it's kind of like, what are your projections? And that's kind of a throwback to the napkin days of the first .com bubble.
yeah, and at the end of the day, a business plan at best for at least in my experience, is here's a guess at what we think might happen should what we assume be correct. And
That's right.
that's that. At the end of the day, it's like, yeah, good luck with that. But I say it's way more important to go out there, mix it up, figure out exactly what does the customer want. Ask them. One of the things I tell people is you want to become the person that, when we're talking about wholesaling, which is a process to buy houses at a discount, sell them at a discount really fast. I tell people to go out there because you want to be the person who finds houses for buyers, not buyers for houses. And that small little difference simply means you know what the people are going to buy first before you go out there and invest so much energy in guessing at what they think or what you think is good, because people buy for their reasons anyway. So in the process of being able to work with, a lot of the Fortune 100 businesses, etc., what are some of the biggest that most people would call mistakes that you encountered to getting to that point?
Uh, for us, it's writing people off when they said no the first time. And so we've been very successful at being what I call a pleasant pest. You know, you're very young in your entrepreneurship years if you uh, write off a prospect during the first few no's. And a lot of times it's about asking the right questions. And I talk a lot about this in my book because I think it's so important. And that's the difference between someone that's very successful and someone that's either average or not successful at all. Asking the right questions is key. I mean, not only in business, but in personal or even marital life, right? You want
Yeah,
to
right.
to what the issue is. So, for us, if someone says no, we challenge them. Why do you say no? Is it that your budget has been exhausted? Is your calendar year from July to July in terms of a regular fiscal year? I mean, can you go to another division of the company and use their budget? And so we become uh, you know, people that can find solutions to where the money is. And we actually help a lot of our clients to find that money if for whatever reason they say no because of budget constraints or what have you. So I think going that extra mile to really understand what's going on from the customer side will really, really make you very successful. Uh, I'll give you a very quick example. During a recent RFP process, request for proposal, we asked a lot of hard questions that companies normally wouldn't ask. For example, how many other companies are competing? The company hesitated to answer, but they eventually answered, and so we know our odds. And we asked them very challenging questions about what they wanted done because ultimately they told us what to put in our proposal to win that rather large, multi-million dollar bid. So it's just going that extra mile to better understand the customer that will ultimately help you the most.
And agreed. And I think the two things that people can take away from what you just said, because oftentimes we're so wrapped up in going, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. And what to say is not the right thing. It's more what to ask. And
Right.
just wonder what to ask more than what to say. And then I love what you were talking about when someone says no, you go find out the reason for the no, as opposed to just letting that stay and turning around and going, okay, well, they said no. In fact, I know no successful entrepreneur who even probably we don't even know how to spell the word no. We don't hear it. It's like no is you mean not yet? That's what I heard? When's the last time you stopped at no? I mean that if that's the case, that's a good litmus test. If you stop at no, you're probably not fit for this. That's for sure.
Exactly. And I encourage, new entrepreneurs to kind of change their approach to asking questions with customers and try to limit yourself to open-ended questions. Because then you'll find that you'll learn a whole lot more about how to help the customer then.
Got it. So what would you say to that person? Maybe they're listening to you and I the first time, and they're saying, "Oh, that's great for you guys. It's easy for you today." What would you say to that person because they're thinking in their head, "I'd love to get started, but I don't know what to do first."
Wow. So, you know, I mentor a lot of new entrepreneurs, and one of the pet peeves that I have is that a lot of people have made the decision to become an entrepreneur versus a decision to solve problems. And so, the first thing I would encourage people to do is find a really good problem that you're passionate about and try and solve it. And that's in line with my history, right? I wasn't trying to become an entrepreneur. I was solving a problem, and the value proposition was at that time so obvious that my customers found me, and that's a great position to be in. I mean, if you find a problem that you're passionate about, you'll work through the night on. Then I think you're on a great path to become a great visionary or entrepreneur, because that's what I think what it's all about, bringing value to the market and people being willing to pay for whatever value it is that you have. Unfortunately, a lot of my generation, Generation Y, it's kind of like hip to be an entrepreneur and join an incubator or a startup or what have you. But there's so many people there that just have the willingness to be an entrepreneur but have no idea, and that's a really bad situation. So find a good idea, something that's going to sell and do well, and I think you're on the path to greatness.
The thing that I was taught in that particular vein was to, find a problem. The bigger the problem, the bigger the solution. And the bigger the solution, the more value that's created, and therefore the more money you will earn.
That's right.
And that's what I look for. That's, as a real estate entrepreneur, I solve problems as they relate to real estate. You solve problems as it relates to, in many cases, helping businesses acquire customers, which is kind of important. So, getting good
Right.
at that is key. And clearly, you've been able to do that and serve many, 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 many different customers across, I would say, the globe probably at this point. Now, my if someone wanted to find out a little bit more, about you or about your services, what would you say is the best route for them to take?
Sure. Well, the best way to find me is online at johnsonmedia.com. That's the company address. And for the book, which is doing really well, just came out with the audio version, which is shutting it down. Apparently, a lot of people like to listen more than read, very busy people. You can find that on Amazon. The title of the book, again, is The Entrepreneur Mind: 100 Essential Beliefs, Characteristics, and Habits of Elite Entrepreneurs. And then finally, the book has a website, and that website is theentrepreneur.mind.com. And if you're like most of us and having a little trouble spelling entrepreneur, you can throw it into Google, The Entrepreneur Mind, and you'll be able to find me, Kevin Johnson, there.
Excellent. Now, you said something I thought was interesting. I'm in the process. My book came out a few weeks ago, and I am in the process of doing the audiobook now. So, did you narrate the audiobook?
I did not. I actually found or stumbled upon Amazon.com's platform
Yeah.
ACX, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, an Emmy Award voiceover artist who coincidentally someone told me on Twitter sounded like the guy from Disney. So that was a nice compliment. And he did a really awesome job and people really like it. So yeah, I'd highly recommend ACX.
Yeah, that's who we're using. It's just that when I asked all the people listening to us right now, when I asked them, they said, "No, we want you to do it." And I'm like, "Oh, goodness gracious!"
No,
So
you've
I
got the voice. I was going to compliment you when we started the call, but yes, you've got the voice. So you've got that burden. Talent, right? So,
Thanks. Thanks. You just encouraged all of them, I'm sure, right there. So yes, that's definitely something I'm still working on that process. It is a process learning
it is.
to make that happen. But that's okay. It's fun, the things we do, right?
You put out a special request. Say, I want a voiceover artist that sounds like me.
Well, there you go. That would be interesting. That, that would indeed be interesting. But it's definitely been fun investing time here with you. I thank you for taking the time to invest here with us. Last question. If someone is sitting right now on the fence and wanting to put on their superhero outfit for the first time, what would you say to them in order to help them deal with anything, any roadblock or mental block that they might have going on right now?
Sure. If I could steal from Nike, just do it. You know, and I know that's probably extreme oversimplification, but at the end of the day, it's the division between the doers and those that don't do it. And so, for me, it was a quotation that I read as a sophomore by Peter Drucker, who I love, the Godfather of Management. He said the best way to predict your future is to create it. And so that's the way I think people should live. They should be proactive in how they go about living their lives. And if that's not enough benefit for you, then perhaps entrepreneurship isn't for you at all.
Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have invested some serious time today, and you now know what it's time to do. It's time for you to go out there and move at the speed of instruction. You know you need to go over and pick up the book, The Entrepreneur Mind. Go get it. Because obviously there's a different way that Mr. Johnson is thinking that you and I can benefit from to go out there and help more people. So you should do that immediately. I definitely enjoyed finding, discovering, and learning and seeing so many similarities, regardless of the business type, that we all go through. There are so many similar things, similar ways of thinking, similar ways of being that help us, help you, help myself to go out there and serve more people. Thank you for taking the time to invest here today with the Cashflow Diary. I look forward to talking to all of you guys again soon. Until next time.
Thank you for investing your time with Jay Massey and the Cashflow Diary. When you have a moment, please visit iTunes and leave a positive comment about the show. And go now to our website, CashFlowDiary.com, to take advantage of our free business building course, Cashflow Foundation. Gain the knowledge, understanding, and skill that will teach you how to never need a job again. Until next time.